We heard that a soldier was killed in Gaza. We shuddered. Oh my goodness, there's a father, there's a mother, there's a child, who is it? And now, I hate to say it, I think we're just taking it in as, okay, the stock market up, the stock market down, the alternate side is suspended tomorrow, and another 3 soldiers, Nebuch, You're right, there's a tremendous amount of unity, but I think we have to hold on to it.
Welcome back to another episode of Inspiration for the Nation. And this week has been a difficult week for the Jewish people. Too many soldiers were killed in Gaza as they try to get back Israel's hostages. And it's been very difficult. And I sat down this week with Rabbi Fischel Schachter, who is one of the most popular storytellers, lecturers in the Jewish world. I don't know if he's the top 1 or maybe the top 5 speakers on TorahAnytime. And he's someone who's so positive. And I wanted to ask him specifically. He has such a chen, such a smile, and he's so upbeat. Usually, how does he deal with difficult times? And of course, we talk about the intense situation going on in Israel and what us at home, people who are not in Israel, people who are not fighting the war, what could we do to help? He's, of course, going to put a smile on your face and also going to help you think. This episode is in memory of Shem David ben Yaakov Shlema, as well as Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe. You will hear in this episode the incredible work at TorahAnytime and how you could get your loved one's memory dedicated towards a day of learning. And you're going to hear a lot more about that. You're going to hear about the incredible work at BITBEAN and how their software solutions will help skyrocket your company to even more success than you ever could have imagined. You will hear about the incredible campaign by Israel Select that you've heard me talk about before and how right now we're helping 6,000 soldiers get fill-in for the rest of their lives, as well as you're going to hear about Twillery and the incredible ear suit that I'm wearing right now and how it will change your relationship with suits. Here is my conversation with Rabbi Fischel. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you so much for coming to my friend Pesach Weiss' house.
My pleasure. It's always nice to come to a friend's house.
And I want to talk to you about a lot of stuff, but first I want to get into your background, where you're from. And
my wife keeps saying that to me.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I never gave her a chance, really. No, I do. I try. Anyway,
okay,
yeah.
So, yeah, where are you from, and what's your, in quotes, origin story?
Oh, wow. I guess our origins are on Mount Sinai, right? That's where you started. Where I'm from, I was born in Brooklyn, born and raised in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is part of the United States, is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It's very different, though. Okay, anyway. Although I think it's harder to get from Brooklyn to Manhattan than it is from Mexico into Texas. But anyway,
that is true. That is true.
I was born in Crown Heights, actually, and we moved to Borough Park. Nothing terribly exciting, but where I grew up. Of course, I saw neighborhoods come and go and change in different ways.
But your parents, from what I understand, like what backgrounds?
So my father was from Galicia, which is southern Poland, and my mother was from Poland proper, and there were 2 different worlds. I mean, only the war could have made such a shidduch. I guess it's all part of God's plan. But culturally, there's no connection whatsoever.
So after the war, they're together, and then they're like, we'll start a family?
So it's very interesting how it came about. My mother, Alel Shalom, and this is actually one of my favorite stories, is she was on the death marches. She was in Bergen-Belsen, and she didn't think she was going to survive. And I think they were in Munich. They were marching them through. And the girls asked the German lady that was standing on the street for food. And she started spitting and yelling at them and said, "You think we're like dirty Jews that walk around with food in our pocket?" And of course, they didn't answer her back. But when she left, she was also wearing a mink coat and they were freezing to death. And as they continued to walk, and so the other girls, one girl just sat down and said, that did me in. That was the nail in my coffin. And if you tarried for a moment, that was a death sentence. And some girls were cursing her. And my mother stopped for a moment, and she said it was one of the most meaningful moments in her life. She said, "What do I get out of cursing?" She just said, "God, Hashem, if I live through this war, I will always have food in my pocket in case someone asks me for food." That was her response to it. And she survived the war. And as we grew up, she always had food. Even if you went on a picnic, she always took along food in her pocket in case someone asks her for food. No one ever asked her for food. She always took along food. And it's very interesting. It was like the joke in the house. And fast forward, she's like 84 years old. And I have to take her to Manhattan to a doctor. And if you've experienced the Borough Park traffic a little bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. People say there's no parking in Borough Park. Just walk down the street. You'll see everyone's parked. Wherever you are, you're parked. So it's just, and she lives on 51st near 13th. So it's really, that's the heart of Borough Park. And the appointment was at real rush hour time. And I had my 89 Ford, those wagons. You remember them?
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are. But that wagon was special. It was different. They don't make station wagons anymore.
No.
You put a family into a station wagon.
I had the schus of getting carpooled in station wagons, like
right.
the backward seats.
The backward seats, right. Yeah. It was special. Yeah. And that car, that 89 Ford, I want to get into the 89 Ford because that'll take away all the other stories. Let me just say, I once brought it to the mechanic. I said, Pete, I think my car needs a new radiator. He said, I think your radiator needs a new car. But anyway, so I stopped my station wagon and the cars are beeping behind me and I ran up and had to help her down with the walker and we got into the car. We got to the corner and the doctor's secretary called and said, where are you? I said, come on, you're on 55th. I'm on 51st. She said, okay. But really, you're on 51st? I said, yes. She was on 55th in Manhattan. I was on 51st in Brooklyn, but she didn't ask for a zip code. So it was a white lie. And as I finally make it to get onto the highway to the Prospect Expressway, she says to me, Fischel, Geitzrick, go back. I said, Ma, what's the matter? You're not feeling well? She says, I forgot to take food with me. And I was like, no, I can't go back. And I wanted to say, it's been 65 years at that point, right? No one ever asked you for food. What do you think? Between the car and the doctor's office, you think someone's going to ask you for food? And she said, go back. So this story goes back about 25 years ago. And then it was culturally, how should I say, we listened to mothers. That's how it was. Mm-hmm. I went back and had to take the walk around. She had to go upstairs. And I could have said I could run into a grocery and pick something up. I could have said even there's the Bikur Chaylim room in the hospital where they offer food. I'll get you food. This is her thing and I'm not taking it away from her. And she made her tuna fish sandwich and it had to be with the napkin, pointing the pickle and everything. And we got to the doctor and they were quite upset that we were late. You had to call someone to get protection to get in. And the reports that he read were not very promising. We were in a down mood and we drove back. And she asked me to park on the corner so that she can walk a little bit. And I parked on the corner, 51st and 13th. If anyone knows the area, that store changed many times. There was a dime savings bank in those days. And in front of it were two milk crates. And there was a man sitting there, not all there. As I grew up, he sat with a partner of his, and he had this wild hair, and he had this big yarmulke that went up real high, like the Chazanim have. Mm. And I never heard him say a word. He just grunt. And I would always step back, and he would collect, and he sat there. And we passed him, and he gives me this interesting look, which I never made eye contact with him. As a kid, I would walk around the corner, and he says to my mother, Mrs., maybe you have something to eat. And my mother had this smile on her face, and she gave me this, she wagged her finger. Uh-huh. And it was I won, I just beat the Nazis. I just conquered, never mind what the doctor said, never mind what's happening in the world, right? I did it. And if I could just capture that smile on her face when she gave this sandwich to this man. And she said to me afterwards that you don't know what it means to be hungry. If you would know what it means, it's worth it to walk around with food in your pocket for 65 years to be able to give someone food once. Wow. So you want to know how my father and mother met. That was the original story. So yeah. My father the father was not in the concentration camps. He wound up in Shanghai, which is, of course, a whole story. Familiar with the story?
Shanghai, yeah, sure.
So he was there. And but till they got to Shanghai was complicated, and he was in Vilna, and he was in different places. And at one point, he was with a bunch of boys that were marching through the woods. They hadn't eaten for days, and someone took them in and said, "Okay, you can eat by me," but there wasn't enough food to go around really. And one of the boys reached for the challah, which the man cut up and put onto a tray, and he assumed that it's okay, and The man went ballistic, and he said, get out of my house. You have no right. I didn't give you permission to take, and he threw them out. And they were like, oh, come on. They hadn't eaten for days, and he threw them back out into the cold. And my father had a similar thought. Very interesting. He said, what do I get out of cursing him? So Hashem, I promise you that if I survive the war, I'll never wash without a guest. That was his promise. And my father and mother met after the war. Somebody introduced them. The only thing they had in common is that neither had a surviving member of their family, immediate member of their family. None of them had a roof over their head. No one knew where their next piece of bread is coming from. None of them spoke English. They didn't even really speak the same kind of Yiddish, because my father spoke like a Galiciana Yiddish and mother more Polish Yiddish. And they just sat there, looking at each other. And my father just said, okay, so this was the first thing he said. So we're not going to wash for a Shabbos Suda unless we have a guest. And my mother said, I'm not going out unless I have food. They said, great, so let's get married. That was it.
Wow.
And that's how they met. That's how they started.
And you would imagine that their story of hardships ends there, but then for many years they struggled to have
12 years. For
Wow.
12 years of fertility, and you didn't have the things that are available today and the support groups that are available today. And you have to realize that in their eyes, they were the only surviving members of their family. My mother had a big family. My father had a big family. No one survived. They were all sacrifices in Auschwitz or wherever. And this, to them, it meant the end of a line, not just in terms of themselves, but in terms of hundreds of people. But they did their best. They really did their best to hold to what they did. About 11 years after they were married, my mother went to a Park Avenue doctor, a fertility specialist. He was the fertility specialist of the time. And after they did whatever they do, he said, whatever was available at that time, he said, Mrs. Schachter, okay, I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm just telling you, when hair will grow on the palm of my hand, you're going to have a child. You're not going to have a child. And she left the doctor's office, and she said she got onto the Madison Avenue bus, and she just went back and forth. She said, I'm not getting off this bus. I have nothing to live for. I'm not getting off this bus. I have nothing to live for. She just traveled back and forth on the bus. And at one point, the driver, an African-American gentleman, got up, and he said, ma'am, you got to get off the bus. We're going to the bus garage. And she said, I have nothing to live for. I'm not getting off the bus. And she always says, this is what he did. He took off his cap, and he went, ma'am, I had a hard day. I don't know what your problem is. He said, I swear to you, it won't get any better if you sleep in a bus garage. Get on with your life. And she felt that was like a message from Shemayim. She said, you know what? He's right. Whatever's going to be is going to be. Fine. I needed that downtime. I accepted. Whatever's going to be is going to be. And I was born a year later. And always wanted to go back to the doctor with all my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And he says, what's going on here? My office is being ripped apart. No, it can't be, because we don't exist, according to you.
His hands probably have like tons of hair.
Yeah, must have hair. Right.
So I want to, at the end, talk about maybe some of like your favorite stories. And I know you wrote the book, and of course you speak on TorahAnytime all the time and all around. But before that, and obviously what's going on, I hoped to do interviews with people that are affected by October 7th, but it just hasn't, unfortunately, ended. Like, we're hearing so many stories and horrible stories, and then some of the stories are like, wow, that's actually heartwarming. What have you seen on your end? Maybe some of the stories that you've seen or spoken about that you could share.
I think we all have to understand that it's our story. I think besides what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, which is, it's not a besides, I'm not saying it as a minor factor. Look at what's going on here. Look at the world. Look at America. Look at the polling. Look at the difference between the younger generation and the older generation. And if we ever thought for a moment that this is our home forever, that we're going to stay here, I think it's, I always wonder, like the people before World War II, they didn't see it coming. So I'm not saying, God forbid, that that's what's coming. But I think that in our, we've always prayed for Geula and redemption and Mashiach and world peace and so on. But it was like in the back of our minds. We didn't really want it on our plate. We want it in the comfort of the recesses of our mind. And Hashem has a plan for the world. And guess what? The plan is moving on. How long can the world survive the way it's going? I'll share with you one story. My married daughter, has an apartment in Yerushalayim, my son-in-law and my daughter, which they rent out. And of course, no tourists closed. So they were asked if they can take in a displaced family. And there's always a concern if you take them in, you don't want to send them out afterwards. But they decided they have to do theirs. And they took in this wonderful family from Netivot. And my daughter said to me, you have to talk to them. You have to talk to them. And my Hebrew is not the best. And people always ask me if I speak Hebrew. I said, I do. It's just people don't understand it. So, I'm the guy, you meet someone on the street on the Machne Yehuda and you break your teeth in Hebrew for 20 minutes asking him directions and he answers you in English. You know the feeling, right? So, but it was enough. It was enough to get through. So this woman tells me that she lives in Netivot. They live in the poorest section of the town. Her husband is in Kollel. Has been studying now for many, many years. They have 6 children. She's a teacher and a tutor, and she travels all around in her, beaten up car. Probably my 89 Ford could be. It went there, it goes there, and then from there to Cuba, something like that. And they were very happy with their lives. And she said they always lived in Netivot. They grew up there. And she lived in what she described as a sukkah on a sukkah, like a wooden shack on top of a wooden house that was built. But it was nice, it was safe, it was comfortable, and there was a lot of love. There's place in the heart, there's place in the, right? How's it go? There's place in the heart, there's place in the room. So there was a lot of room in that house because there was a lot of place in the heart. And she says the morning of the attack, when they realized something is happening, so you were supposed to run to your mamad, you're supposed to run to your safe room. They didn't have a safe room. They had a room. This was their house. So they all huddled together, and the father said that, we have to do things to protect ourselves. We're obligated. The Torah says, you have to guard your soul to the best, right? Doctor says, don't smoke. Doctor says, cut cholesterol. And definitely we have to protect ourselves. But there's nothing we can do. We can't walk out because there's shooting. We don't have where to go. So that means that we can say to Hashem, we're protecting ourselves. And he took out a Tehillim, he took out his Psalms, and he says, this is our safe room. We're saying, Hashem, our lives are in your hands. And they heard the shooting outside, and they heard the terrifying screams, and they just kept repeating the words of Tehillim. And the father said, this is our safe room. Okay, this is where we're here. After a while, it seemed that things were quieting down. And the father thought that maybe in the shul across the street, in the synagogue, that maybe in the basement there is a safe room. So he started walking out, and somebody came running down the street and said, get back in, they're still here. And he got back in, and they spent another 2 hours in their safe room. And he said they walked out, and it was very interesting. He said whoever was in the same situation survived, as if to say like they were in a different, or whether they figured no one can possibly live up there, whatever the reason was. And she said they tried staying in someone else's house, and there was a blast of a missile, and all the windows in the house shattered at the same time. And they wandered from place to place. Somebody gave them a mansion for a week, but the kids were scared. It was too big. The kids were frightened and traumatized on what was happening. She told me an interesting thing, that a neighbor of hers that lives in a similar house, that a missile came through the wooden wall, cut across the dining room, and went out the wooden wall on the other side. Because the house was so flimsy, there wasn't enough resistance to set off the explosion. And it exploded a while away. But it managed to cut through their house. Like, what was that? What just went through? It went through one wall and went out a window on the other side. And she says, she told the children, if we would have lived in a nice stone house, it would have exploded. Right? There was no resistance. Sometimes there's no resistance, and we just put our lives in the hands of the Rebbe Shalom. There's a certain continuity. So my daughter said to her that, I can give it to you for 2 weeks because they have a tenant coming in 2 weeks, someone reserved. She said, fine. And my daughter said, I just feel so bad that it's only for 2 weeks. And I also don't have enough beds. Maybe for all the kids, we'll have to figure out what to do with mattresses. And she said that after what we went through, we don't think 2 weeks in a row. If we have a roof over our head tonight, we are the happiest people in the world. Because no one, absolutely no one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. So we're perfectly happy to be here. And the next day, the husband went off to find the kollel to learn it. And it was just fascinating to hear the story. Just hear a story of such pure faith, such pure emunah. They tried going back a few times, and they just said that as the bombs were falling in Gaza, the floor was shaking. So they came back to Yerushalayim, and people took them in. There's a tremendous amount of chesed going on, just an awful lot. But that story really hit me hard because that's the only real safe room we have, all of us. Again, we have to be responsible, but that's it.
It's interesting because, I'm hearing that story and they're saying that as long as we have tonight, like right now, this moment, then we're good. And at least me personally, I'm always like worried about like obviously safety for my family and also parnasa and that I have everything. And I'm like calculated, like, okay, now based off the calculations, everything seems to be working. But I think their mindset of like that, if you're in a dire situation, you clearly see like it's not about in 2 weeks because who knows what's going to be then. Right. It's really always about now.
And I think that's why people are like more depressed today than they used to be, because we're constantly living in our future and guilty over our past. And, Madison Avenue ads are always saying we have your future is in our hands. Either they're scaring you into buying a product or convincing you. My mother used to say that back at home, nobody made a living, but we lived. He said, here, most people make a living, but we're not alive. You're not living for the moment. And when you begin to take life for granted, you don't live for the moment. You don't appreciate the moment. So you're worried about tomorrow. And there's no end to worrying about tomorrow.
I guess that's one of the silver linings. Again, of course, if October 7th and everything that happened then, and all the people would have been saved, that would have been amazing. And I'm not taking away from that. But one of the silver linings is this awareness that I think everyone has. I think people in Eretz Yisrael and Israel maybe understand it a little more because they're there. But I think just the world, or at least people connected to the people of Eretz Yisrael are like just more aware of like, whoa, everything can be shooken up in an instance.
Right. Think about this for a moment. You have a country that has probably the most sophisticated surveillance equipment in the history of the world and in the world. And they didn't see an elephant in the room. So at one point, it's, this I heard from my Rebbe, and really Chodesh Levavis stresses this very much. The trick to peace of mind is to have a 2-track life. Yes, I have to figure out what to do for parnas. I'm not on the level just to sit down and wait for a manna to fall from Shemayim. And yes, I have to do my best for Shalom Bayis and keep peace in the home. I have to follow the rules. But at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with my success. It's Hashem gives it to me, I'm going to have it. If he doesn't give it to me, I'm not going to have it. I remember somebody once told me he's an employee in a company. And he said, you've been there so many years, you never thought about going into your own business. He says, why? I said, well, you can make more money. He says, I make a lot more than my boss. I said, how's that? He says, I make, let's say, I don't know. He says, I make $50 an hour. But I work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. He says, my boss is living in his business 24/7. Even on Shabbos, his mind is flying. He's on vacation, he's flying. So if you figure out the hourly rate, my boss is getting less than me. So, I can go home. And I think that whatever we do with life, when it comes to shidduchim, when it comes to health, do what you have to do and say, I'm not sitting by the controls. There was real Tower used to say, I'm in the back seat of the car. I'm not in the front seat. This is where I am. And your attitude to life begins to change. Okay, I'll do what I can, and let's see what happens. But if you really feel you're in control, the stress is constant. So I think that my grandfather, my great-grandfather, probably where your grandparents were.
My father's mother's from Germany, my father's from Poland, and my mother's parents are from America.
Wow. So again, you see how Hashem puts things together, right?
Yeah. How I got here, or my brother, like it's
right.
You're lucky.
So each and every one of us can say such a story if you go back to our grandparents. So our existence is based on a bunch of events that happen that no one can possibly understand. But obviously there's a God that's orchestrating it, right? Because that created us. So we have to take that and apply it to our life, that there are things happening in our life that we don't understand that seem to be going haywire. And guess what? Someone is behind this. Someone is orchestrating it.
We'll be right back this week's episode, but first I need to tell you all about this incredible free offer by our good friends at TorahAnytime. If you have grandparent, great-grandparent, or someone in your family, whoever passed on, TorahAnytime is willing for absolutely no charge at all. That's right. No money involved to dedicate all the learning on their upcoming yard site to elevate their soul. And there's nothing greater we can do for someone who's passed away than to learn the holy Torah in their schus and merit. So go ahead and check out this incredible program that's free that you could tap into. Literally no strings attached. On their upcoming yard site, their name will appear on TorahAnytime, and over 30,000 hours a day, that's how much learning there is a day on TorahAnytime, will be learned in their memory, in their schus. And there's nothing that elevates a soul like learning the Heilige Torah. I encourage everyone to go to freededication.com and to put in the name of a loved one and the date that they passed away. You don't know the Hebrew date? No problem. Put in the English date and the year, and TorahAnytime will convert it for you. This is a very limited time offer. This started a few weeks ago, and because of the huge demand, they're extending it just a bit longer. So click on the link in the show notes or call the number 948-DEDICATE, which is 333-4228. This is very special. You're encouraged to do it and spread the word to friends and family while they're accepting names at no charge. Go to freededication.com right now. And I mean, to speak for myself, I went ahead and did it. It is so easy. And the day of the yard site, of course, you should do your own learning. You should give your own charity. But to think of like every single minute, every single hour of Torah being learned on TorahAnytime, you're hitting up people in I'm not even going to go play. Literally think of the world. That's who is watching. That's who's learning Torah. And for our sake, go ahead and click on the link in the show notes, because we want TorahAnytime to be like, hey, look how many people signed up for a free day of dedication because of you. We just want to have as much people learning in memory of the loved one that you're going to put in. So go ahead and click on the link in the show notes. And before we get back to this week's episode, I want to tell you all about something that's on my mind. We've all heard of Chabad, and we know a Chabad on campus, literally one of the most powerful ways to get people who are Jewish but don't know enough about the Torah or Hashem more involved. They're yearning. They're looking for something else. Chabad on campus had a challenge, right? They have so many places that they're involved. There's a lot of campuses, and they needed one system, one place, one software that has everything. They went to our good friends at BITBEAN, and BITBEAN helped them transform their organization into something that they never experienced yet. Of course, Chabad has been always ahead of the curve. They had Chabad.org, and that's exactly why when they had this challenge, they had this dream. They said, how can we make this dream come true? They went to our friends at BITBEAN. So basically, BITBEAN helped them create one system that worked for the staff, the rabbis, and the students. There's a lot of moving parts here, and BITBEAN basically sat down with them and said, tell us your dream. We'll create the system that helps your dream come to life. And that's exactly what they did. So now on the entire system, if you want to donate to them, simply, it's a very simple process. No one gets more turned off from donating money than going on and then just the system not working. So they created an easy app to use. The website is just so easy to use. The communication is amazing. And by the way, this is not an ad for Chabad on campus. I'm just telling you exactly how incredible BITBEAN created a system to help Chabad on campus get to the next level. Whether they're having a new kumzitz, okay, we need to notify everyone. How are we going to do that? Boom. With the system that BITBEAN created, they're able to do that. They have a robust registration system that's complete with a register via SMS, which is, if you don't even know what I'm talking about, that means texting to sign up to register for a program or to do something. Obviously, the entire ecosystem is incredible. If planning trips, they could do that all within their software. And of course, an entire Jewish U course system with attendance and a credit reward system. This is like official, real deal stuff over here, was created with the help of BITBEAN, who tailored the desires that Chabad on campus had. So if you want a place that's going to work with your creativity and understand that, get that, and then create a system that's going to help your business, your organization skyrocket, go ahead and check out our friends at BITBEAN. They want to understand your vision. They want to take your vision and they want to create the system that's going to make the vision come to life. A lot of us have businesses. A lot of us have organizations, and there's always loose ends. There's things that could be tightened up. And more than that, we're always able to get to the next level. And we can't get to the next level unless we have a proper ecosystem, proper software, and the proper team that understands what we need. Therefore, go to BITBEAN.com, or you click the link in the show notes. Go ahead and try them out. Now back to this week's episode. From a person-to-person viewpoint, have you ever seen or remember, I guess, I don't know what a better word than like unity that's going on? Because honestly, right before Sukkot, I remember there was like strife. There was like, I don't exactly know the details. I know there was a minyan that wanted to like daven in Tel Aviv on Yom Kippur. And then people there were like, no, you can't pray here. And there was like, to me, like silly, like, why are we fighting about this? And then after
justice reform, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, and then after, like, everyone's like, that is stupid. Like, well,
Right.
why are we fighting about that? Do you remember a point in at least Jewish history where there's been so much, I guess, focus on what's really important?
I'm not really such an historian, but it's a very interesting question.
I'm saying even in your own life.
But again, we're getting, we were much better right after Simchas Torah. We were all obviously still traumatized. And now I think too many of us are falling into we heard that a soldier was killed in Gaza. We shuddered. Oh my goodness, there's a father, there's a mother, there's a child, who is it? And now I hate to say it. I think we're just taking it in as, okay, the stock market up, the stock market down, alternate side is suspended tomorrow, and another 3 soldiers, Nebuch, You're right. There's a tremendous amount of unity, but I think we have to hold on to it.
How do we do that? How do we like keep that moment, like that feeling that we had right in the beginning of focused and saying like, okay, this is terrible. How do we not get, I guess, jaded? Sadly, I know these are like people's lives, but just as life goes on.
Right. So we have to, I think, rethink our lives. I think most of us after Simchas Torah, after October 7th, made changes in our lives. I mean, I've heard from so many people. We were more careful what we say. We were more careful what we look at. People got together to pray, to daven, whether it's to learn. Most of us made changes. Most of us realized it's not life as usual. And most of us understood that what happened in Israel can happen anywhere. And especially when, originally there was a sympathy from the world and now it's reversed. I think that we just have to keep those changes in our life. Think about something that you took upon yourself then, and am I still holding on to it? I have to ask myself the question. Today's January 18th. What am I doing different January 18th, 2024 than what I did 2023? I think we have to do something in our lives, whether it's the amount of charity you're giving, whether it's the amount of time you're giving to someone else. Where am I? I had a friend of mine, he keeps calling these news hotlines all day, and he said, it's driving him crazy. He's going out of his mind. And his wife is complaining. I said, why don't you do this, okay? You can check in on the news, because if it's a proper site or whatever it is. But before you do that, learn a page of Gemara, or say 10 Kapet Chotelim, or pick up your phone and look for someone that called you, that's trying to reach you, but you're not interested in speaking to them, and that person is frustrated, and give them a call back. Do something before you call. Like pay for your call. So he said, that's a great idea. And I asked him what's doing. So he said, first of all, he caught up in his Daf Yomi. And second of all, he's calling a lot less because he's too lazy to do it. I think that we just have to, the way we keep it going is that we have to keep reassessing our lives and saying, what am I going to do? I'm not going to take up arms and go running to Gaza. But I have to take up arms internally in my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, in my relationship with other people. If I can't say I'm doing something different now than I did last year at this time, then I'm missing the boat, and we need a readjustment.
Is your father still alive?
No, not in this world.
So, no, because before the way you said it, I wasn't sure. What would your parents say today after seeing what happened? Because I'm 31, and I always heard my grandparents talk about obviously the Holocaust and what happened, and obviously never to forget. And they saw what they saw, and I heard that, and I definitely never doubted, but there was a certain miscommunication that there's no way that what they saw and what I experienced is the same. Like in a way, like America, growing up in America, like from a not from a spiritual level, but from a like physical level, like we have everything here. It's a lot of physical blessings over here. And then after seeing what happened here, maybe it's because I'm too young. Maybe like, the 9/11 is something that maybe shook up. But like, I don't remember an experience here where it's like you were mentioning before, of like, whoa, like maybe Mashiach is really coming. Like now I fully understand of the hatred that exists. And like, okay, maybe for a little, it was quieter. Like we didn't see the anti-Semitism as much. The world kind of felt bad, but now we're at a point where it's just back.
It's not just the hatred that exists. Look at the demographics. The younger the crowd, the more there's radical anti-Semitism, because call it colleges, call it universities, call it everything else. So this is the next generation. This is the next generation of America. This is what's coming. So does it mean we should panic? No, panic doesn't help. There's a famous Hasidic master, Nechel of Zlotchev. He said there are two things you shouldn't worry about. Things you can do something about and things you can't do something about. Those are the two things you shouldn't worry about. If you can do something about it, so do it. If you can't do something, what's the point of worrying? So just take life for what it is. Be thankful for life. So they asked him, but really everything in this world falls into one of those two categories. He said, yeah, right. That's the point. So I'm not saying we should panic, but we should be realistic. We should be realistic. I once took my 8th grade class to Rav Matisyahu Salomon Zchaim L'Bracha. And he asked them, what is the meaning of the pasuk, Ve'ese eschem al kanfi nesharim, I will carry you on wings of eagles. When the time comes for Mashiach to come, I'll carry you on wings of eagles. And I was like, these kids don't know the answer. I'm going to be in trouble. I was like, you're shy, Ramesha. I was like, Lady Yitzhak Masar Sashim. I was using trying to get all the protection. Well, the kids knew the answer, Baruch Hashem. And they said, well, an eagle keeps its little birds on top because it doesn't have to worry about a predator coming from on top. And the other birds hold their birds from underneath. So he said, this is what he said. He said, an eagle keeps her birds on top. But what's the difference between the little eagles and the other little birds? The kid said, well, the little eagle's on top. No, I know that, but what's the difference? So Rav Salomon said, the other birds, the mother's holding on to them. The mother's holding on for dear life. The mother knows a predator can come from on top, so she's holding from underneath. If someone could shoot from underneath, the eagle, the baby's on top. But the eagle is not holding on to the mother. The baby eagle has to hold on to its mother. So he said, Mashiach is going to come, Ve'ese eschem al kanfi nesharim, Hashem will carry us on the wings of eagles. But he said, you have to hold on to the mother. We have to hold on. And we just have to be realistic. At the point we're realistic and we realize, our lives are in your hands. And there's a plan, there's a path through Gullus. And the exile was never intended to last forever. I think just recognition of it creates a kind of an environment. If not, then God has to remind us.
So I just want to shift gears a little because I know you wrote a book about a year ago. What's the title?
I have to remember. Did this ever happen to you?
Okay, a great book. And we could literally spend 4 hours going through it and dissecting it. But and anyone who's watching this who haven't read it yet, we're going to have a link in the show notes so they could go buy it or buy it by the local bookstore. Is there, I know there's a lot, and I know it's kind of like asking you, like, who's your favorite child? Is there a story in there that's maybe your favorite, or maybe that's too hard of a question? Like, based off everything that's going on now, or there's a message in there that you want people to hear. Can you share one of those stories?
So I'll share something with you, and maybe it wraps up a little bit of what we were discussing. Okay. Rewinding, I am 19, in Torah, and there were 3 chasanim, there were 3 grooms that were going to get married, and there were 2 tragedies. One groom, for whatever reason, went to a doctor on a regular physical, and the doctor said maybe something suspicious, and it turned out it was more than suspicious, and that wedding didn't happen at that point. We were all very traumatized. When you're 19 years old, these things don't happen, right? They're not supposed to happen. They happen only to older people or to someone else. Mm-hmm. And then there was another chassan that, for whatever reason, the college just dropped the shidduch. She just decided that she was pushed into it, and he was traumatized. And there was 1 bowling pin left. And he was my chavrus, he was my study partner. I'm not using real names, I'll call him Shlomi. And I see Shlomi he's just not by himself. I said, Shlomi, what's up? He says, you know what's going to happen to me next. I said, why should you say it's going to happen to you next? He says, well, the Gemara says, Echad min ha-chabura shemes, yidagu kol ha-chabura. If one person from a chabura dies, everyone else has to worry. I said, everyone has to worry. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Fine, so I'm worrying. So I said, come on, cut it out. You'll be okay. You're going to get married. And he is like, he's going out of his mind. And the next day, we used to learn very, very well together, and his head just wasn't there. I said, you know what? Let's go for a walk. I said, Shlomi, tell me, what are you worried about? What do you think is going to happen? He says, I'm thinking about crazy things. So let me hear. Gemara says, Daiga belevish, if there's Daiga in your heart, yisachen with, speak it out. So he says, what if there's going to be a terrorist attack the day of my wedding? And all highways and roads will be closed. I'm like, I wasn't ready for that one. I said, aha. And what else are you worried about? He says, he was getting married in Connecticut. He says, what if we get a flat tire on the way? I don't get it. We get a flat tire, you change the tire. He said, what if the other tire is also flat? And now I'm getting worried already. Uh-oh, what's with him? So there was a gentleman that used to learn half a day. He was a mental health professional. It wasn't like it was today, but he was some kind of a therapist, social worker. And I went over to him and I said, do I have to tell Shlomi's father that he's cracking up? He asked why, and I told him what's going on. He said he's not cracking up. He said he's worried that the cow is going to drop the shidduch, just like it happened to the other boy. And in our mind, what we do is, it's a natural defense, is that we begin to worry about things that are irrational because it, in a way, it like eases us. We don't want to worry about the main thing. So he's going to spin a lot of other things. He's not cracking up. It's perfectly normal. I said, maybe he's perfectly normal now, but if he keeps up with this, he won't be normal too long. So he said, call him over. And to this day, I don't know why I was privy to this like ad hoc session. And this is what he does. He takes out a little notebook like this, something like this. I still use these things. It's very technologically advanced. Even China can't hack into it. I find it to be a step ahead. And he says, Shlomi, I want you to tell me exactly what you're worried about. Tell me exactly what you are concerned with. He says, I'm embarrassed. He says, don't be embarrassed. I feel like saying, well, he should be embarrassed. He starts again. But be honest with me. He says, I'll tell you the truth. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm worried that on the way to the wedding, I'm going to have a flat tire. And what if they change the tire and that tire is flat? I said, well, come with a pickup truck full of tires, okay? He says, calm down. Like, let me handle this. He says, what are the probabilities every time you get into a car that there's going to be a flat tire? He said, 10%. 10%? He says, 10 out of every 100 times you get a flat. Where do you buy your tires? He says, okay, 1 out of 100. 1 out of 100? Really? 1 out of every 100 times? Okay, let's say 1 out of 100. So on one side of the page, I want you to write probability. On the other side of the page, I want you to write non-probability, okay? And write down flat tire. 1% chance of getting a flat tire. That means, right, conversely, obviously, there's 99% chance you're not going to have a flat tire. Now, what else are you worried about? He says, what if there's going to be a terrorist attack on that day? Okay, what are the chances of a terrorist attack happening right there and then in that part of the country, that moment? 10%. Whoa. Okay, 1%. Got him down to, that means 99% is not going to happen. And he went through all the things that he was worried about. And he had a bunch of other interesting things that he was worried about. He was very imaginative, Shlomi, very novel, very original. So he said, now look at it. Every time you do it, write it down. 99% it's not going to happen. 98% it's not going to happen. And Shlomi felt better, and I felt good. So Shlomi went home that night, and he this is how he calculated. He says, 1% chance of a flat tire, 1% chance of a terrorist attack, 1% chance of a tsunami, 1% chance of a storm, and so on and so on. He added it all up, and it came up to a 666% chance that if you sum total it, he's not getting married. So he was not in a good place. So here we are, we're in the Beis HaMedrash, and a man is coming by, and he's selling raffle tickets for a menorah. It was before Hanukkah. And I had this brainstorm. I went over, and I bought a raffle ticket. I said, how many menorahs are you selling? He's only selling 100. And I went over to him. I said, here, I bought you a raffle ticket. He looked at me like, this is what I need now, yeah? He said, I want you to call your father-in-law. I mean, the guy that may be your father-in-law, just in case there's no terrorist attack and just in case your tires won't be flat or whatever, all these other things. And tell him that if he plans on buying you a menorah, he should not, because you're going to win this menorah. He tells me, tell me, did you lose it? No, I lost it now. I said, why? He says, first of all, I don't know if he's buying me a menorah or not. That's terribly rude. And second of all, I never win menorahs. I never win. I got you. Right? You don't think you're going to win this menorah, right? No. And 100 menorahs, 1% chance you're going to win. But you don't think you're going to win. Well, there's a 99% chance I won't. There you go. And there's a 99% chance there won't be a flat tire, and a 99% chance there won't be a terrorist attack. And Shlomi's doing good. And I'm feeling really good about myself. I don't have a degree in mental health I don't have a license to do therapy. Just use your brains, and we're learning, and things were great for about 2 weeks. And one day I come to yeshiva, and I'm sitting there, and everyone's looking at me, and they're saying you have a phone call downstairs. Now, I don't know if you can relate to this, but there were no cell phones in those days. There also was no personal computers. You know what that means? It meant when you made the blessing in the morning, Shalom Yisani Ovid, thank Hashem for not making me a slave. It wasn't a bracha levatal, it was real. Mm-hmm. You know, you weren't a slave to your technology. And so there was a public phone downstairs. And you picked up the public phone and you call. If you got a call, somebody came to call you that you have a telephone call downstairs. And of course, you waited online for the phone, and just when you waited online for the phone would ring. And well, I have to explain what a public phone is.
Yeah,
I don't even know what it is.
I know. That's the Superman goes into.
Right. That it has like a wire and it goes into a wall.
Yeah.
You'll never understand. Anyway, I think they still have one in the Museum of Natural History. But anyway, so they call me down. I have a phone call, and I'm going downstairs, and I pick up the phone, and I'm saying, "Yeah, it's Shlomi's father. Shlomi's father. Why are you calling me? And where's Shlomi anyway?" And he says to me, "Come over to the house." He says, I should come over to the house? Yeah. Why? In a very solemn voice, he says, "Well, she called now." I said, "Oh, no. She must have gotten hold of his notebook and saw the list." You know what I mean? I said, come over to him. He said, "Why should I come to the house?" "Come to the house." And I remember walking to the house when you're young. Afterwards, you get to feel it again. But then my knees were like shaking. They were like jelly. And I just slowly approached. And I'm like, I walk into the house, and it's like Tisha B'Av in the house. Everything is covered. And I walk upstairs, and Shlomi's sitting there, and his head is down. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. And I said, when did the Kala call? And he looks at me and goes, "Not the Kala. But your wife said that, your father said she called." He said, "No, the woman called." "Which woman?" "The one from the yeshiva. She picked up the phone, she called me and said, 'Mazel tov, you won a menorah.'" And he flipped out. That was it. This was a proof, Min Hashamayim, that he's gone, he's done for. And I'm like, oh no. I said, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I didn't know which way to go. And I'm like, oh boy. And I came downstairs, and my father said, "Who asked you to give him that advice?" I didn't think he was going to win. See, I don't have this list of. And he's like, I said, "What do I do now?" Now I felt even guilty because I kind of dragged him into it somewhat. I said, well, this is just great. What's going to be now? So we wound up going into to the Mishgiach, Torah and Rav Wilson, sein gesund stark, and I asked him if he can give us a few moments. And again, to this moment, I don't know why I was privy to be there. And he says, "So what are you worried about?" And he starts again, the flat tire again with the flat tire. And the Mishgiach is a very interesting response. He says to him, "I'm scared there's going to be a flat tire." And he said to him, "Yeah, it could happen." So I explained. He's also scared that the spear is going to be flat, and that, yeah, it can happen. It can happen. He goes, "What else are you scared about? What else are you concerned about?" He says, "I'm scared of a terrorist attack." "Terrorist attack? It could happen." And then what if the Kala drops the shidduch? It can happen. What if I go to the doctor and the doctor says there's something wrong with me? It could happen. And I'm like, whose side are you on? And Shlomi's like looking at me, "You see? Flat tire could happen, right?" It proves it. And we're finished, and we're like, okay. So I said, maybe you show the Mishgiach your list. And he looks at the list, and he says, "Let me tell you something. In Shemayim, there's a time that's written before we're born when a chuppah is going to take place, when you're going to get married. Now, we don't know what it says there. Now, he said over from the Divrei Chaim, from the Sons of Rav, when that time comes, the entire Bria, all of creation, is obligated to make sure it happens at that split second. that there's a unity of these two couples and a new life begins and two half neshamas become a whole neshama. But if it's not time yet, then something's going to go wrong. There's a famous story in Yerushalayim, he said, where the chassan forgot the ring. And everyone ran back to get the ring. When they finally brought the chassan the ring, he was so nervous that he dropped it and it rolled into a sewer. And somebody said, that's a bad sign. This doesn't look good. It's a bad omen. And the brisker was there, and he said, no, it's just not time yet for them to get married. That's all. So we got to get the ring or figure out some alternate way of marrying her. So he said that really it's either you're going to get married, then if it's written in Shemayim that you're going to get married, then you're going to get married then. If it's not written, you're not going to get married then. So what this really is, you're giving God advice. You're saying that if it's not the time for you to get married, you're telling God how to stop it. He doesn't need your advice how to stop it. So he said all these possibilities, the weather, the flat tire, the terrorist attack, that she's going to drop you, that there may be health issues. He says it's irrelevant. There's only one question. Is it time or is it not time? And I'm like saying to Mashiach, what are you doing to him? And Shlomo is thinking, and he asks a question. So why should I go and buy a suit for my wedding? Why should I book a hall? Why should I do anything for the wedding? If you just acknowledged that it could be there's not going to be a wedding. So the Mashgiach said, we are obligated to be positive in our life. And we're obligated to live a life of bitachon and say, okay, I hope things will be well. In the back of our minds, we know that we need Hashem's help, but I hope things will be well. And on this given day, you are obligated to prepare for your wedding. That's your mitzvah. And you're obligated to go with your grandmother and listen to your grandmother's opinion about what kind of tie you should have. And your mother, that's your kibbut avein, that's your mitzvah. And whatever you do from now till the wedding is your mitzvah for that day. And part of that mitzvah is to have bitachon and to feel a sense of security that why should God drop me? No, I assume it's going to be okay. Whether you get married or not, what does that have to do? You still have this mitzvah. And the Mashgiach said an interesting thing. Yaakov Avinu waited for Rachel how long? 7 years. And the pasuk says it was kiyamim achadim. It was like single days. If you're waiting for something to come from an Amazon package to come. It takes forever for it to come, right? If you're anxious about something, then it should say the 7 years or 70 years. So he says, so the answer is Yaakov Avinu knew good and well. He's dealing with Lavan. He's dealing with a father-in-law who's the greatest, mischievous, crook that existed in that time. And either it will happen or it's not going to happen. I have to prepare myself the next 7 years and do what I can to prepare for it. Whether it happens or not, I'm in God's hands. And that's why he was so excited with what he did step by step every single day to prepare, not thinking at the end that I'm in control of what's going to happen, that the time just passed by. Shlomo walked out and I said, oh, this rabbi got it all wrong. This guy, he's going to go nuts. You just validated his concerns. Couldn't believe it. Shlomo was like a different person. And I realized afterwards that everybody was trying to convince him it's not going to happen, but no one can convince him it's not going to happen. And what he said is, we don't know what tomorrow is, but our job is to live today and to smile to your wife today and smile to your kids today and assume and hope for the best. That's our job. And regardless of what happens tomorrow, you did what you had to today. He was a totally different person. It was a fascinating lesson to me. The cute thing was, and not him, but the Kala had a flat tire.
Really?
But they changed the tire. It was fine.
Oh, wow.
But here's the next step. I met Shlomo many, many years later. And he said to me, we reminisced and we laughed about the experience. And he said to me that 2-3 years ago, he was diagnosed with serious illness. And Baruch Hashem, the treatments were successful and they told him that he's technically clear. But he has to come back every 6 months just for, blood test scans. And I said to myself, he said, how can I live like this? Every 6 months, I'm going to face a death sentence, like standing in front of a judge. Am I going to live or not? I'm going to go out of my mind. And I went back to that experience. And I said, okay, God made me go through it then so I can apply it now. No one knows what tomorrow is going to be. I'm going to live my day. I'm going to enjoy my kids. I'm going to sit by a Shabbos table. And what tomorrow is tomorrow. He said it's been 2-3 years, and I can tell you from when he told it to me, it's been close to 20 years, and he's still, Baruch Hashem, okay. But he says he felt he had to go through that experience then because it gave him, and I think that this is what people are lacking today. We have it all figured out how, the world, how it's controlled. It's, especially in from circles, it's, when you're 13, you're bar mitzvah, when you're 22, you get married, and when you're 25, there's a schedule, and it doesn't always work according to that schedule. And the second that, it takes a month later to have a baby, or you're not a chassan on your third date, we go crazy. Just to understand, I do what I have to do today and leave the tomorrow in Hashem's hands. So to me, that's a very powerful story.
That is very powerful. I love that. The best is yet to come in this episode, and what Rabbi Fischel Schachter said left me literally speechless. But first, I need to brag a little because of you. All of you listeners and watchers, you helped Israel Select get so many pairs of tefillin for soldiers. Right now, Israel Select has 6,000 soldiers who said they will wear tefillin for the rest of their lives if they get a pair of tefillin. Israel Select is very connected with the most incredible Seifrim out there, and they are getting tefillin for just $500 a pair. And they've already given out 3,743 pairs to soldiers. So many of you have helped out. This is something that it's a big undertaking to try to get that many soldiers to wear tefillin, but they want it. They're asking for it. They want to wear it in Gaza. They want to wear it for the rest of their lives. What greater schus that we could have. And I'm going to read off here. There's Mr. Katz. He invested over 160,000 of his dollars, and he got his friends and family to give $350,000 towards this campaign. And he gave 7 reasons why he gave. He said, first off, because the soldiers ask and I want to support them. This is a time where we're trying to do whatever we can to help our soldiers feel safe and feel good about what they're doing. And if they want to spiritually connect with Hashem by wearing tefillin, he said, I'm going to go ahead and help them do that. Number 2, because it melts some of the divide between the right and the left of the Jewish nation. Right before this war, there was so much strife and fighting going on, and this is helping unify us. 3, because this is a fleeting opportunity. Yes, Mir Hashem, this war should be over very soon, but the people right now want to wear tefillin, and you could help. 4, because it doesn't speak to everyone. Listen, we all know the barbecues and giving out the candy and different things. That's universal, but this is something specific. He's like, I wanted to give to something specific. Tefillin. Because, number 5, because it supports Israeli economy. Yes, there are a lot of seifrim that people aren't writing as many sefer Torahs or tefillin, and they need work. So this is actually helping the economy. 6, because it maximizes my own zechuyot. Because it's a schus, of course. If someone's going to wear tefillin the rest of their lives, because of you, because of your donation, who could think of anything better? 7, because of the good people behind the initiative. Of course, is run by Rabbi Josh Friedman of Israel Select. Israel Select has been around for such a long time. You know who they are. And if you don't, definitely go ahead and look at the beautiful work that they do. They are an established organization, and they are stepping it up with helping. And number 8, the long-lasting plans. They are now thinking ahead and building infrastructure for Shabbos hospitality and carousels for soldiers after the war. That is why Mr. Katz is donating as much as he is. If you go ahead and go to the link in the show notes, that will be the best. But if you don't want to go to the link in the show notes, you can go to thechesedfund.com/IsraelSelect/tefillin. Go ahead. 1 pair, 2 pair, whatever it is, go ahead. Maybe you donate it. Donate to another, because think about it. It's another entire human being wearing tefillin for the rest of their lives. Amir Tashem. And we're going to be right back to Rabbi Fischel. But lastly, let me tell you about Twillory. Twillory has changed the game for a lot of things in my life. I've talked about how their pants have lasted me more than 5 years, and their incredible comfy shirts, so much to it. But I need to tell you about their Twillory ear suit. Yes, this is patent pending, or not pending. I don't know. They have an exclusive on it. This technology is incredible. It's basically like this breathable material. I'm not kidding. If you hold it against like the sunlight, it's see-through, but against your skin, it's not. It's a full suit that I am currently in Florida, and it's boiling here. And I actually went to a few meetings and I wore this suit. No one even realized how comfortable I was. If you want to be comfortable on Shabbos, if you want to be comfortable by a wedding, if you just want to wear a suit, look good, but also feel good, go ahead and use the code INSPIRE on Twillory.com for $18 off. You spend $139, the suit is over $139. Go ahead. It's for first-time users. Use the coupon INSPIRE for $18 off. If you're not sure which size you are, by the way, also the Twillory return system is incredible. order a few sizes and return the ones that are too big or too small. I walk around Northwood Mirror. People are rocking the suit. By the way, if you're like, oh wait, will I be too cold in the winter in it? No, you won't. I don't know how this thing works. It's cool in the summer or the hot weather, and it's just regular material in the winter. Go ahead. It is revolutionary, and I will not be surprised if in the next 2-3 years, everyone is wearing this throughout Shabbos and weddings and everything, or meetings. Go ahead and purchase the suit. Now back to this week's episode. If there was one person from history that you could sit down with and schmooze with,
So I'll tell you a cute story. I once had the schus of going to Reb David Feinstein's Chomashir, and somebody asked the question. He said, if there was one person in history that you could invite to your Shabbos table, who would you invite? And the other one was talking. One guy said the Rambam, the other one said the Vilna Gaon, the other one said the Baal Shem Tov, one of them said Rothschild, smart guy, and the other one said Montefiore. And I asked Reb David, who would you invite? He goes, if I can invite someone to my Shabbos Suda from history, he said, I would invite the hungriest person that ever lived to be able to feed him. He said, why would I trouble the Rambam to come down? And that was like a tremendous insight. But I'm not on his level, right? So that's a very interesting question. Who would I invite? I don't know. I didn't behave so well when I was in yeshiva. One of my teachers, they gave out assignments. Everyone had to do a president, and I got James Knox Polk. I said, why does he get Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt? I got James Knox Polk. And the teacher said, because of the way you behave. And in those days, you have to go to the library. There was no other way. They went to the library. I said, is there a book about James Knox Polk? They said, no, we don't have any. No one ever wrote a book about him. But all the other presidents is a small chapter. So he didn't get the nomination for a second term. And the thought occurred to me when I did that report. I asked my father then, I said, how come there's no James Knox Polk Bridge or James Knox Polk Tunnel? There isn't even an aircraft carrier named after him. He said, because nothing happened in his 4 years. There were no major wars. Maybe there was, but there wasn't any. It was never challenged, he says. It's only the challenges in our life that make us who we are. But that doesn't answer your question, right?
I was thinking the answer is President Polk. But
right, I should ask President Polk, right, yeah. I don't know. Who would I want to speak to in history? Who would you want to speak to in history?
I hate when people reverse it on me because I don't like the question myself, but I like the answers people give. I think Moshe Rabbeinu. Although
well, every time you open a chumash, you're speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu.
I know, but I'm curious. What would he say today? Like with just everything, the world, Judaism. Like what would he say? He would say that things are going according to plan. Right.
That's what he would say.
But what I would want, I think today's day and age, there's talking publicly about Musar. Like in yeshiva it happens, but now the world is very soft. And I like Musar. I would ask Moshe, give me Musar, give us Musar.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear his Musar.
So you open up a chumash, he's giving you Musar.
He's saying it's going to be there.
He says, I would love to speak to my grandfather because I never got to see any of my grandfathers. That's the truth. I would love to see my grandfather. I was in Australia once for speeches. You go once to Australia. Not that it was great over there, just getting there. It was very difficult. You have to take a flight. I think now there is a direct flight from New York. You have to take a flight from Kennedy to San Francisco, and you miss your flight, of course, if you're me. And then from there, just get onto a plane for another 16 hours or something like that. Wow. Straight over the Pacific.
And then you're stuck there. You got to also come back.
You got to come back to it, right. No, it was a great experience when I was there, but just getting there was very hard. So someone called me when I was still in New York, and she told me, I'm your second cousin. I said, you're making a mistake. I don't have a second cousin in Australia. She says, I am your second cousin. My name is Dr. So-and-so, and I'm your second cousin, and I expect the visit. I'm like, who is this lady? An older person. And we got there, and she kept calling. So finally I said to my driver, I had a driver, Baruch Hashem. It was good. It was a lot of times I sat on the wrong side of the car because the steering wheel's on the other side. You want to drive? No. Around the other side. And I said, by the way, this lady keeps calling. You know who she is? She said, I know who she is. Is she okay? Yeah. She says she's a doctor so-and-so. What kind of doctor? Well, ask her. Does she live far from here? No, 10 minutes away. I says, let me go over. Let's just explain to her. I'm not your cousin. I don't have a cousin in Australia. So we went over there, me and my wife, and there's a big sign, Dr. So-and-so. We came in. I asked her what kind of doctor she is. I from the looks of things, I thought she was like, I don't know, a neurosurgeon or a cardiologist. She said that she has a PhD in French history from 1770 to 1776, something like that. And she says, I'm your cousin. And I said, no, I don't have a cousin. And she takes out a picture of my grandfather. My father had a picture of his father. And she takes out a picture of my grandfather. I said, wait a second. And she started identifying, and it turned out that she is a second cousin. And she told me a story that my father grew up in Lemberg. Lemberg was Lvov. That was the big city. The Pnei Yeshua was Rav in Lvov, I think. It was Irva Ein B'Yisrael was a major metropolis. He wanted to see what it's like to learn literature yeshivas in Lithuania. Now, I don't know how to explain it to you, but for a Chassidish Bacher growing up in Lemberg to want to see what it's like in a literature yeshiva would be tantamount to me telling you, I want to check out the moon or I want to go to North Korea. And he wanted to go. He was a very determined person to learn and see. And he got onto a train. His father was upset, didn't give him any money. His mother threw a sandwich through the window. And he wound up in different yeshivas. He wound up in Nevada. And that's how he was saved, because he wound up in Vilna, if you know the story. And they went to Shanghai during the war. So when he was in Vilna, and there was a plan to be saved through Japan, he went back to try to save his parents. Maybe you can come along with me. He also needed money for the train ride. There was the transcontinental, Stalin had built that train that goes from one side of Russia to the other. Longest train in the world through Siberia. And he went back, and it was very, very dangerous to go back. You had to really sneak and dodge bullets and go under waters and climb mountains. When he got back to Lemberg, I didn't know this story. My father never told me the story, but this cousin said she was there. She was a little girl. She was there. They were hiding in a bunker. And he's walking down the street, and somebody saw him. He said, are you out of your mind that you're beard and payas and this? Get off the street. He said, where are my parents? So he told them where they're hiding. So he went down to the bunker, and we hugged each other, and he said, come on, let's go. There's this way out. We'll just have to get to Vilna, and we can take this Trans-Siberia Railroad to the other side to Japan, and we'll be okay. So he said, how do we get to Vilna? Well, you have to climb a few mountains and swim a few rivers and dodge a few bullets and run away from some. My grandfather said, I can't even get out of the house. It's not going to happen. So my father had an older brother, and his name was Yosef Moshe, and my father said to him, so come with me. So the older brother come with me. And his older brother said, I'm not leaving my parents alone. I'm staying, whatever it's going to take. So my father said, okay, I'll stay here also. And my grandfather got up and said, so I shall lose both of you. One of you go. So my father went. And as she's telling me the story, I had tears in my eyes. And she also told me my father never spoke about his sisters and things. It was too hard for him. She told me about each older members of the family, and she had some pictures. And I said to myself, okay, so I was negotiating this series of speeches in Australia for like 10 years. Not 10 years. I mean, it was a whole year till I don't travel so easy. And I was saying to myself, okay, they want me to speak in Australia. And I was like, I'm a little pawn. That it has to be that what happened was that my father met this older brother, Yosef Moshe, in Gan Eden someplace, and he said, did you ever tell your son the story that I stayed and you went? He said, no. He said, well, you at least could have told him. So fine, I'll tell him now. So God picks me up and sends me to the other side of the globe, right? So I can hear this story from this lady. How did this lady find out that I'm coming? And why was she so persistent that I should come to her? And why did I wind up going at the end? Because I had to hear the story. And that was like, so again, who I would love to meet? I would love to meet this Yosef Moshe. I would love to meet my grandfather. But I guess, Mashiach is going to come, and none of us are here forever. We're going to meet them. Hashem says, don't worry, you're going to meet them in time. Right now, I need you to be here and do what you have to do.
That was a beautiful story. Out of the 613 mitzvahs, do you have a favorite mitzvah?
Do I have a favorite mitzvah?
Don't ask me my favorite mitzvah.
Okay, I won't.
No, you could.
Mitzvah, look what you're doing now. You're doing so much and getting the word out. Making people happy.
Is that B'dafka why you, to me, you have like the most sharim on TorahAnytime? Like, is that like the driving force?
A lot of people share them. Yeah.
I know, but you have a lot. Is that the driving force for it?
Yeah. Just, I talk to myself. I always tell people I talk to myself. I mean, it's a problem I have. I talk to myself. But I don't try not to talk down to people. I try to get a smile on people's faces. I try to do what I can. Somebody once came over to me and said, "It's honest. It's mockery. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be serious. Why do you do so much humor? You're just a comedian and you're cloaking it in words of Torah to kind of kasher it, to kind of wash it." So I said to him, if he wants to tell me something, he can say it direct, doesn't have to beat around the bush. So I began to think, I don't know, maybe what I'm doing is wrong. So I asked someone on my block, the Gerel Chiyid, and he told me that Rav Shalom Shvadron was the famous Magling Yerushalayim, and he was also sometimes very, very funny. And he said that he said the story about himself. He used to give a shir in the Zircha Moshe Shtiblach in Yerushalayim Friday night, and his father-in-law once came over to him afterwards, and Mamish gave it to him in front of everyone. He said, "Litzanis in a shul, mockery. What is this?" And he felt very bad. He said, "Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing." So he went to the Chazanish, who was the great sage of the time, and said, "This is my style. I make people cry. I make people laugh. Is this called Litzanis? Is this called something you're not supposed to do?" So the Chazanish said to him, "So I want you to tell me your funniest story, and I want you to do it with all your faces, all the face. Long beard. He was very comical, very what's the right word? Animated, yeah. And he said, I did it. Like even though I was standing, it was me and it was a one-man audience, and I tried to be the funniest I possibly could. And the Chazanish is thinking for a while, and he says to him, and I'm waiting for this sentence, or else I have to. I don't know. Become a plumber. I don't know what I have to. And the Chazanish said to him, Shalom, if the Magidim, those that used to go around speaking, if the Magidim in Europe would have spoken that way, then we would have saved half of Klal Yisrael that went off the derech that were not Shem Shabbos. All the Bundists and the communists and everything else that went off would have saved half of them. So he defined for him that leitzanas in a negative context means making fun of someone, degrading something. So I'm very careful. This site I got once from the old Skelena Rebbe, Zechut Tzadik Levracha. He said every joke I have to fine tune. It has to meet 3 criteria. The one is it doesn't hurt anybody. 2, that it's not just clean, but it's more than clean. And 3, my purpose in saying it is to make people laugh. Is to make people happy. That's something. Someone told me that. A man told me. I met him in Muncie about 2 weeks ago. He said he was in Gateshead, which was Matisyahu Salomon, and he had a real from chavrusa, real. And he used to crack jokes sometimes. He used to make jokes sometimes. And he told him, "You can't do that. You can't do that. You're not allowed to. So he said, at one point, this chavrusa of his went to the mashgiach and said, "I can't learn with him anymore." Went to Rabbi Matisyahu Salomon, who was then mashgiach in Gateshead. And he called me in. I said, "Uh-oh." And he says to him, "You make fun of words of Chazal?" He said, "Never." He said, you insult people? Never. "Oh, you playing crack jokes? Sure, go ahead, keep doing it," he said. So, you try to make people happy. That's what I feel.
It's a very nice answer. And I am going to finish off with this question, and it could be this was the answer for this question, but if it was, we'll switch it. What's the worst advice and what's the best advice you've ever received?
Worst advice this guy told me to invest in this company called, I don't know what it was, but that didn't do very well. Mm-hmm. The worst advice was to put a new transmission into my 2020 Astro. I don't know. Mm-hmm. What was the worst advice that I ever got? That is such a good question. The best advice I ever got was from the Shadchan, who suggested my shidduch. That was the best advice. That was a politically correct answer.
Yeah.
What was the worst advice that I ever got? It's a very, very good question. I don't remember really getting bad advice. I'm trying to stay away. The worst advice I got was when I was told to stay away from someone, and it wasn't warranted, and I hurt that person. You hurt someone, it's really tough. I would say along those lines.
Okay, I'm gonna add on one more question. You seem very positive, and I think someone who's watching your share and watching your classes, your lectures, see it, and they're definitely getting this sense of course, you need like emunah and batachon, but how do you deal with those challenging moments? Because you are human, and I think sometimes when someone has the maybe even natural personality, maybe you worked on it, they're like, everything's Baruch Hashem great. But how do you deal with, I guess, the hard moments?
Again, I've been through the ringer like anyone else is. That's synonymous with life. I should be a much bigger Baal B'tachon than I am. I'm the guy when the check engine light goes on in my car, and someone says, in my car, it's a ner tamid, it's a constant thing. But when the check, I fall apart. No, I'm not. I always go back to this story, and I say, whatever's going to be is going to be. This is who I am. I'll tell you an interesting thing. I was going through a very difficult time in my life at that particular time. My mother wasn't well. I'm an only son. Wife had a house full of kids. I had to go sleep in the hospital every night. She had a major surgery, and I was teaching 8th grade. And if you've ever slept in recliners in hospitals, I think that they are designed to make sure that it's half your body width. Whatever your body width is, you stick out on both sides. They roll them in. And I'm like trying to stay in this, and the room is too small, and the television is blaring from the other side of the curtain. And and hospitals have their Aseret Dibros. They have their 10 commandments. One of them is, thou shalt not sleep. You're not supposed to let the patient sleep every 2 minutes. And I'm saying to myself, how am I going to do this? And I have to wake up in the morning, drive to Borough Park, pray, daven, get to school and teach 8th grade for hours, and then run home and work with my kids and come back to the hospital. I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And at one point, I called my Rebbe. It was 3:00 in the morning, but he was in Israel, so at that time, so I was able to call him. And I said to him, I really feel like I'm cracking up. I can't do it. So he told me a word from the Lechevitch, who was one of the great Hasidic masters. He says, you have to think like this. With Hashem, you can fly over 7 skies. Without Hashem, you can't step over the threshold. So it's not you anyway. It's either you have him or you don't have him. So I'm working on that. I'm repeating it. And then 2 maintenance people come into the room at 3:30 in the morning. One is fixing the sink. Why 3:30 in the morning? I don't know. And the other one is mopping the floor. And they're talking to each other in officially hushed, but it was a very shrill hush. You know what I mean? And one of them says, hey, look, I do my best, okay? This is the mop I have. This is what I can clean with. He says, my shift doesn't last forever. It's not my house. I do my job. Hey, I'm happy. I have good bread on my table. And he walks out. And I said, God, I needed to hear those words. I said, the world isn't ours. It's not ours. It was never intended to be ours. We're never intended to be here perpetually. We're all here for a purpose, and a very designed, specific purpose. Something that you can do that I can't do, something I can do that you can't do. And that's true for every single person on this planet Earth. Just something they can do for the world that nobody else can. Not God would have not created them. And I said, okay, it's not in my hands anyway. So if Hashem will help me, I can do it. And if he can't help me, I won't. And I was in a good mood. I would have jumped out of that recliner and started dancing, but I was stuck in it. I couldn't really get out of it. But otherwise, I would have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. I am not in the studio, and I was planning on going somewhere really extravagant, and there was 6 months in the planning, but we had to cancel because there was no option. I wasn't going to go somewhere crazy for, in quotes, Yeshiva week. We knew it's not the right time. We still needed to just get away from just being overloaded. So we went to somewhere a lot more simple. But I think that's just the nature of how everyone's feeling now. How could we do anything without Israel on our mind first and foremost? If you got to this point in our YouTube video, go ahead and say the word. I've never used the word before in the comments, l'chaim, L-C-H-A-I-M. That's what the goal of this channel is. We're trying to help you enjoy your life. Obviously right now it's just not such an easy time for the Jewish people, but got to keep our head up. And that's just keep our head up, look up to Shemayim. That's what's going to get us to victory. If you have not yet checked out TorahAnytime, if you haven't dedicated a day of learning to a loved one, go ahead. I did it. The process is so simple. And, when you go on the yard site of that person, your grandparent, your aunt, your whoever it is in your life that is no longer with us, you will see the thousands of hours learned in their memory on that day. So go ahead and click the link in the show notes, and specifically click the link in the show notes because we're trying to track the success of this. So when you go ahead, again, you don't have to give any money here. You just go ahead and give a name and the date, and it helps our show. If that's the only reason to do it, go ahead and do it. If you have not yet checked out BITBEAN, you can click the link in the show notes. They are incredible. Even if you're not even sure what the challenges your company has, but you just know that you have room for growth, which company doesn't, go ahead and reach our friends at BITBEAN. If you want to help the soldiers who committed to wear tefillin for the rest of their lives, you could go ahead and click the link in the show notes for Israel Select. They're an incredible organization. Of course, they step up to the plate now. And you know what? These soldiers, this is what they're asking for. They're asking for tefillin. And listen, I don't know if you could get them the type of gun that they need, but you definitely could help them get the tefillin that they need. And lastly, let me tell you about the Twillery ear suit. I am in Florida now, and it gets hot. And no guy likes to wear a suit that makes them feel hot. Twillery has this literally new technology where the suit is basically breathable. It's made with this mesh material that feels so comfortable, but also lets your skin breathe. You could also wear it in the winter. I know, how's that work? I don't know. There are a bunch of scientists over there. And if you use the code word INSPIRE, you are going to get $18 off your new ear suit, or honestly, anything you get at Twillery. Use the code word INSPIRE. This is the suit that will change how you look at suits forever. Kid you not, it is so comfortable. You could wear it in the summer, you could wear it in the winter, you could wear it to a wedding, you could wear it on Shabbos, you could wear it, you could look good, and you could feel good. Get the Twillery ear suit, $18 off with the code word INSPIRE when you spend $139, which the ear suit is more than that. And you have to be a new customer. And go ahead, if you are not a man and you don't want it for yourself, then you can buy it for your husband, for your son, for your father. It is a great gift. I totally love it. And you will see me wearing it in a lot more interviews. Twillery ear suit, the suit of the future. Of course, use the code word INSPIRE for $18 off. We're going through rough times, but remember, inspiration is everywhere. L'chaim. Living L'chaim.